So I'm just getting things set up to go shoot the time lapse later on. At the minute on the table, haven't got anything. Gonna need a tripod, some gloves because it's probably gonna be a bit cold. Also gonna need a jacket. I'm also gonna take a Kindle because I'm thinking that it might be about a 3-hour time lapse I'm gonna shoot, not entirely sure yet. So just something to read, pass the time. I'm also gonna take a flask of some kind of hot drink. Gonna take some earphones just to listen to some podcasts or something while the time lapse is going on. Put that in the entertainment pile. And this is a secret ingredient. If you're shooting long exposures or time lapses and it's going to get cold, sometimes you get dew forming on the lens, like condensation. So by keeping the lens warmer, you can actually prevent that build-up so you don't like ruin your time lapse or your photos. I'm also going to take this big Gehumfing chair. Nice to have something comfortable to sit on. This is a little bit overkill, but the spot that I've got in mind, it's not too far from the car, so I don't mind carrying a big heavy chair like this for a bit of comfort. What else have we got here? We've also got a hat. Put that in the not freezing to death pile. Oh, of course, the camera that I'm going to be using is this one that I'm shooting on right now, the Canon EOS 6D Mark II. So what I'm going to do now is make sure the battery is fully charged, and then later on we can head out to the location. Head out to the location. So I've arrived at the location where I'm setting up the time lapse. I've already set up the tripod and the time lapse, and as you can see, hopefully it's not too blown out there, we've got this series of wind turbines in the background, and I've already used photo pills to check out where the sun's going to set, and it's going to set somewhere along this line of wind turbines. So we should get a pretty cool time lapse. If we just come over here, you can see that I've got the camera set up on the tripod. This is the 6D Mark II, and I've already set the camera up to work with the built-in intervalometer. So it's currently set up to take a photo every 30 seconds. And then later on in post, we'll join up all of the individual raw images in Lightroom, and then we'll export them to LR Timelapse. So you can see we should get quite a nice effect here. Even on the iPhone screen here, it's looking quite nice. Even without a time lapse, it's really nice bit of video. Very tranquil, serene. You can see on the camera itself here that I've got it set to manual mode here. So what I'm going to do now is just sit down, break out the Kindle, maybe the headphones, and wait around for about 3 hours for the sun to set and hopefully the stars to come out a little bit. I'm not sure quite what the cloud's going to do, but hopefully we'll have some nice stars come out, and all throughout this entire 3 hours I'm going to be manually adjusting the exposure, so adjusting ISO, adjusting the aperture and the shutter speed to try and maintain a good balance of light. So it takes a bit of effort, but when we head over to Lightroom and LR Timelapse later, we're going to be able to use the raw image files to kind of smooth out any transitions. Okay, so about 2/3 of the way into the time lapse now, you can just see a little bit of light on the horizon there. It's been a beautiful sunset. Hopefully I've captured it in the photos that are going to make up the time lapse. Using a little hand torch at the side here just to light my face. There we go. It's probably a little bit better. Yeah, so got another hour to go, and I'm hoping that the sky is going to go completely dark, and we're going to get some stars into view, which will be really nice. We'll see what happens. It's almost completely black now. There's a few stars coming out, and the horizon's almost completely black from the sunset. In terms of focusing, what I did is I used photo pills, and I used the app to work out the infinity distance focusing for the 35mm lens, or 35mm focal length that I've been setting it to. This hopefully will allow me to make sure that the stars that are going to be in focus when they come out, and they should be at infinity in terms of focus, so hopefully the stars will be nice and sharp. So what I've done is import all of the raw files from the SD card into this raw folder here, and you can see all of the thumbnails. We've shot about, let's just go to the bottom here, 318 raw images in this time-lapse sequence. So what I'm going to do is head over to LR Timelapse. And if you haven't heard of LR Timelapse before, it's a program that allows you to create time-lapse in a number of different ways. So what I'm going to do is navigate to the raw folder that we just saw in Lightroom and click on it, and you can see in this panel here that it's going to load all of the raw files, and it's going to calculate some luminosity values and also give us the aperture, shutter speed and ISO for each image. It's now going to generate these preview luminance values, and you can see this blue line is being calculated for each image in the sequence. So we'll just wait for this to complete. You can see this big peak here, and you'll see a few of those. That's where we're going to change the ISO or the aperture or the shutter speed. So basically it's compensating for the light reducing as the sun sets. So we'll just let this finish off. And you can see at the end here, we're almost completely in full nighttime. We can actually get a preview here. If I just click the play button, we can get a preview of what the time-lapse might look like. We haven't actually changed any of the settings yet, so it's not going to look perfect. We're going to get a lot of flickering of the exposure values, but it's a good place to get a rough idea of what's possible. The good thing about LR Timelapse is if you hover over these buttons, it tells you exactly what to do. So what I'm going to do is click this keyframes wizard button, and it's going to ask us the number of keyframes we want to generate. I'm just going to leave this as it is, but you have a lot of control over this and you can tweak it if you want to. Next, I'm going to click the Holy Grail wizard button. A Holy Grail time-lapse is also called a day to night time-lapse. Basically, you're starting in daylight and finishing at nighttime. So we'll click this Holy Grail wizard, and it's going to give us a number of parameters that we can modify. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but you can see we can modify these lines here. So we'll just leave it at that. Then the next button here in this workflow is the save button. This is going to save the metadata, so we'll just click that. And you can see at the top here we're saving. And if we hover over this next button, it tells us what to do next. And it's telling us that if the sequence is already in Lightroom, which in our case it is, we can set a filter, go to the grid view and select all, and then read in the metadata. So let's head back to Lightroom. We're already in grid view, so if we just pull up this bar here and come over to these filters, we can see we've got this Lightroom full sequence filter. We'll just click on that. I'm going to hit Ctrl A to select everything, and then we'll come over to metadata and choose read metadata from files. So I'll just click that, and what that's going to do is read in the metadata that LR Timelapse just wrote. If we head back to LR Timelapse, the next step here is to edit the keyframes. So what we need to do is use the provided filters and then edit the keyframes from left to right. What this means is that we'll come down here again and we'll choose the keyframes filter. This will give us a number of keyframes that we can edit using the develop module in Lightroom. The idea here is to edit these keyframes in such a way to provide a smooth transition from day to night. So we'll start off with this first image. I'm just going to hit D to develop, and then we can start to make some adjustments. So that'll do for now. What we need to do is head back to grid view, and we'll select the first one and then the second keyframe, and we'll use this scripts drop down and we'll choose sync keyframes. We can now come into the next keyframe here. Once again, head into the develop module and make some changes. So maybe we'll reduce the saturation a little bit. Once again, head back to grid view, choose the second keyframe and the third keyframe, and once again choose sync keyframes. And we can see in this final shot we've just got the stars. We'll see if we can bring those out a little bit maybe without introducing too much noise. And that'll do. If we have a look at the help here, you can see that once we've edited the keyframes, we can then save the metadata for all of those keyframes. So let's go and do this. We'll select all of these keyframes, choose metadata, and choose save metadata to files, and head back to LR Timelapse. So the next thing to do is click this reload button. This will reload the metadata that we just saved, and this will take into account the keyframes that we changed. We can now click this auto transition button and LR Timelapse will do its thing. And then we can click this visual previews button. What this is going to do is give us a visual preview of what the changes to the exposure will look like. So you can see this pink line is being calculated, and once this line is finished we can move on to the next step. So that's the visual previews generated. Once again, you can click the play button here to get an idea of what the time-lapse is going to look like. Sometimes when you're shooting a time-lapse you can get this noticeable flickering effect. LR Time-Lapse has this visual deflicker tool, so we'll just click on that. And we have a few options here. We've got different levels of accuracy. If you want higher accuracy, you can choose that. You can set up a multi-pass deflicker here, which will take a bit longer. So sometimes you have to experiment with that. What I'm going to do is just hit apply. And once again, LR Time-Lapse is going to do its thing and try and automatically reduce any flickering in the resulting time-lapse. So that's the first pass completed. Now we've got to wait for the second pass to complete. Okay, that's the visual deflicker completed. Once again, you can get an idea of what this is going to look like by clicking the preview button here. The next thing we need to do is actually render the video. So once again, if you hover over the instructions here, we need to read in all of the metadata for all of the files and then export the video from the LR Time-Lapse export plugin. Let's go and do that. The first thing we need to do is change the filter back to entire sequence. Select all of the images and then in the metadata here, choose read metadata from files. This will read in the updated metadata, including all of the deflicker information. Once that's done, we can right click and choose export. And for the export to here, choose export time-lapse LR time-lapse, and we get the LR time-lapse dialog box here. We need to choose an output path where the intermediary files are going to be stored, so I'll just go and do that. What I like to do is to create a folder for these intermediary files. I'm going to leave this selected as original, JPEG and 8 bits, just to save some storage space. Once that's done, I'm going to click export, and you can see if I just expand this down, we're exporting 318 photos here. So once all of these exports have completed, we can head back to LR Time-Lapse and export the final movie file. So that's the export complete, and we're now in LR Time-Lapse's render video dialog box. There's a few things we can do here. For example, we can choose to force the output to 16:9, and if we do this, we can move the frame up and down, and we can use this slider here to get an idea of how that's going to affect the final image. I think for this particular time-lapse, I want to make sure that I get the top of the rotor blades in, so we'll leave it about there. Once again, you can just check different frames. We can also choose the amount of motion blur that we want, and this will help smooth out the final image. I'm going to leave this on setting 2. We're also going to export 4K UHD here at a frame rate of 23.976. I've selected ultra high here, but this will take a bit more time. All we need now is to hit render video and wait for the video file to be output. So I'll take a look at the final rendered time-lapse video in just a moment. If you like this video, please click the like button and give the video a thumbs up, as that really helps the channel. And if this is your first time here, feel free to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.